Tonight, we meet Jesus at the dinner table, sharing a meal and fellowship with his disciples, with his friends, with those closest to him who had been journeying with him for the better part of 3 years. And at this table, we're met with the unexpected. The last thing that the disciples would have expected Jesus to do was him interrupting their Passover meal to wash their feet. If this was going to be done at all, this whole foot washing thing, custom dictated that it would have been done upon entering that upper room and would have been done likely by a servant, certainly not their teacher, because this was a dirty job. Sandal-bearing feet exposed to all the dust and dirt of the day, in a time when walking was the main mode of transportation. The feet of the time were not pedicured perfection, but grimy, worn, and calloused. And here is Jesus, whom the disciples have followed, whom the disciples respect and admire, with a basin of water and a towel around his waist, insisting that he wash their feet, the feet of the ones whom he loves. Now we hear some resistance to this. Not all of the disciples are so sure that this is a good idea. Why would Jesus do this? Perhaps they don't quite equate this gesture as one of love. Or maybe they figure if anyone is going to be washing feet, it should be them washing Jesus' feet. Whatever the reason, they can't quite grasp that Jesus is the one who rules through serving and whose power is love. Another thing that's unexpected that night is that Jesus washes all the disciples' feet, even the one who was to betray him. Jesus doesn't skip over Judas, nor does he send Judas away from the table. He tells the disciples that one of them will betray him, and then washes all their feet and breaks bread with each and every one of them. Then he tells them that they are to wash one another's feet. And as we'll hear very soon, he lets them know that their number one goal is to love one another, that they will be known, and in turn, Jesus will be known by this love. Now, this past Sunday, in preparation of tonight's service, I spent some time with our youth, and we chatted about the telling of Jesus' Last Supper with his friends, which they're sharing with us here this evening. And they spoke about how they see Jesus putting others first in this passage, even when it's hard. They spoke about the pain of being betrayed by a friend. And they spoke about how people can struggle with belief. They also spoke about the roller coaster of emotion that accompanies this reading, knowing that it leads to Jesus on the cross, and how even still, Jesus' invitation for his disciples and for us is to spread joy in the world. Now, it wasn't lost on me that there we were, me and about a dozen youth, gathered some 2,000 years after the Last Supper in an upper room, our youth room, around a long table. And it was boisterous and engaging and filled with insight and learning together. And it's not lost on us that here we are tonight, gathered around the table, to share in a meal that everyone's invited to, a meal where Christ is made known in unexpected ways. Because while we might know the order that tonight's service will take, we might recall hearing these words from Scripture before. How Jesus is made known in our lives here and now may just look different than what we're expecting. A number of years ago, during a Maundy Thursday service, as we moved into the foot washing part of the liturgy, much as I did this evening with Kate, I removed my stole, I grabbed a towel, and bent down to wash feet. Only at that service, many came forward to have their feet washed. And there weren't youth or little ones at this service, except for the choir director's son, who was about 5 at the time. He was a bit of a permanent fixture in the congregation, coming with his mom to most services. He had his spot in the front pew closest to the piano, where he would read and color and sometimes squirm and protest or fall asleep as he waited for Mom to finish work. Only on this particular evening, something different happened. He was really curious about this whole foot washing business. And as he watched with his eyes wide open, I smiled and nodded to him with this affirming yes. He could come forward too. So there I was, expecting him to come forward and take off his shoes and his socks, and I would wash his feet. Instead, he came up. He took off the plaid shirt he had on over his t-shirt. He draped it next to my stole on the altar rail, picked up the extra towel, knelt beside me, hands in the water, washing feet, with the intention and care of one much older than he was. When we were done with the foot washing, he followed me to the altar rail. I put my stole back on, he his outer shirt, and he went back to his spot and resumed coloring as the service continued. That was exactly where Jesus was made known that night, in the actions of a little child. And all of us there at that service were changed because of it, whether our feet were washed or not, because there, gathered around the table, we saw Jesus' love lived out in an unexpected way. Do we dare to trust the unexpectedness of Jesus? Do we allow ourselves to believe in his love even when it makes no sense to us? When it shares a table with those who will betray him, washes grimy feet, and asks us to do the same. It's anything but an easy task or an easy ask, but it's worth it. It is life. And the good news is we don't live it alone. We live it together, gathering again and again and again at Jesus' table, where love is made known.